Can you tell us a little bit about what that term means, all-weather interceptor?
Okay. The whole purpose was, okay, anything in those days, and I don't know if it's with today, but under the NATO and the NORAD agreement, anything that approached the North American continent had to be identified within 10 minutes. And if it wasn't identified within 10 minutes, a manned fighter had to be scrambled to go up and fly beside it, intercept it, and say friendly or foe. And that was what our squadron duty was basically identifying airplanes coming into the North American continent. So the whole purpose then of an interceptor is to, well, if you're going to identify, what you had to do was peel up and come in beside him and fly off his wingtip and then identify him. And in those days, remember, this is back in the late 50s, early 60s, didn't have GPSs and all this sort of stuff. And so these airplanes were coming across the north, across Iceland, Reykjavik, down through tip of Greenland, crossed by Goose Bay, heading for Toronto. And they were sometimes off track, off on time, and they didn't even know where they were half the time. And so if they were off track, then they couldn't be identified by a flight plan, so they didn't check in, and so we'd have to fly up, and very often it was KLM 707s, whatever. One interesting story: I was stationed in Goose Bay for a while, and the reason we were in Goose Bay because the Americans were phasing out their old F-89 Scorpions and bringing in their 102 Delta fighters. And so we then had to take squadron duty at Goose Bay. And the Americans take their squadron duty very seriously. Anyway, one morning, I don't know, let's say about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, it was dawn, or it was daylight, and I got scrambled. And we used to get scrambled 3 or 4 times a day to identify airplanes. And I got scrambled, and it was a low-level scramble. This guy was only flying about 5,000, 6,000 feet, puttering along. And so identified, and the radar brought us in, and my navigator, okay, with the interceptor, you had onboard radar. And so the ground control would vector you towards it, and then we would lock on with our radar, airborne radar, and then we would fly a pattern and come in and sit beside him. So I'm flying a pattern, came in beside between layers of cloud, and this airplane's sitting out on my wingtip. And he's poking along at about 150 knots, just crawling along. And I've got flaps down, and I've got everything hanging in a CF-100 to try and stay with him. And I looked at him, and I called back, and I said, I don't know what it is, I said, but it's got British markings, it's a twin engine, and it's amphibian. And then all of a sudden, over the air, this pilot, he was on the same frequency. He says, it's a widgeon, man. It's a widgeon. A Grumman winged. Okay. So then I peeled off and came back home. Yeah, but anyway. But very often it was 707s and that sort of thing off track. Yeah.